Hey, hello, Amy, Chris. Welcome to the channel, guys. Oh, damn, got all the new subs up in here. Hey, welcome to the channel, people. I appreciate you being here. Nick the Ice Pick Rigatoni. Fancy name, man. I like that. Welcome to the channel. Oh, okay. Bullhead City, huh? Another Arizona native. Welcome, man. Welcome. I'm in good old Wilcox, Arizona. In southeastern. John Denicola. Welcome in. No, yesterday, man, my notifications weren't going out. Oh, okay. Awesome, man. Shit. If you're ever in town again, just hit me up. I'm pretty sure you'll see me around. Always riding around on a bike. Of course, there's other people around here that ride on a bike, but I'm the only one on a bike that films the police here. Dillhole, what's up? It's raining in California. Damn. Well, I hope you're enjoying the nice warm weather we have here while you're just checking it out. Yeah, it does that to me too, John. The notifications. Like sometimes people will post something, like for instance, somebody posted something for New Year's, and I had barely gotten the notification like 2 days after that. So yeah, that's kind of weird. Yeah, Nick. Yeah, most of them are, man. Hey, gamer bro, what's up? Hey, I'm doing just fine, man. Hey, thanks for asking. Well, it is nice and sunny here. I hope you guys are able to enjoy the view, even though you guys got rain and snow and all the elements there going on. Damn. Okay. Um, do have six in chat. We have five thumbs up. Guess we'll go ahead and get started. All right. And if you guys are new, we are talking about the Navajo Code Talkers. Oh, uh, yeah, sorry about that, man. I can't do anything about the buffering situation. I know I got a good signal here at the park because they have Wi-Fi modems here, so it must be on your end. I just have to refresh it, I guess. It's the best you can do. Okay, this is called expansion of the code. Philip Johnston visited Camp Elliott frequently to check on the progress of the project, although he had nothing whatever to do with the formation of the code and was elated with what he found there. Sometime after the code was well underway, he called on Colonel Jones at his home in San Diego, at which time he was informed that another request for 200 recruits has been sent to Washington. This time I believe we're going to get them, Colonel James explained jubilantly. On hearing this optimistic report, Mr. Johnston, who was in his 40s, asked timidly, Colonel, if that authorization comes through, do you think you could use my services? I want to enlist if the Marine Corps will have me. The colonel was delighted with Mr. Johnston's offer and confessed, I never dreamed you'd want to come into the service. I'm sure we can get the necessary waivers for your age. We'd be more than happy to put you in charge of the training program. Mr. Johnson recalls that en route to Los Angeles and home, my car seemed to float through a pink haze, but each subsequent day passed slowly as a week, and the slide road became heavy as lead. At least a letter came from Colonel Jones, stating that unlimited recruiting of Navajos has been authorized. He also suggested that Mr. Johnston write a personal letter to the commandant, requesting permission to enlist with non-commissioned rank commensurate with duties assigned. On September 14th, Mr. Johnston sent in his application for enlistment in the Marine Corps Reserve, Class 5B, specialist to serve in the capacity of training and direction of Navajo Indian personnel for communication and to perform duty with them, both inside and outside the limits of the continental United States. He wrote, because of my great desire to be of service in the foregoing capacity and to get started in this work at the earliest possible moment, I am applying for enlistment in the Marine Corps rather than for a commission which would entail more time and uncertainty. I already committed to the program involving the Navajo Code by official authorization for unlimited recruiting. Officials acted swiftly. Within a week, quartermaster personnel in San Diego were outfitting the elated Mr. Johnson with the uniform of a staff sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. The plan for the use of Navajo Indians in the Signal Corps of the Marines proposed in February was now a reality, and the man who had fathered the idea had been put in charge of training early in October. After the departure of the 27 men of the pilot project for Guadalcanal, John Benali and John Manolita were sent to the reservation to seek out new personnel for the communications program. They worked the Navajo area with Anglo recruiters beginning in the autumn of 1942. with Mr. Benali working in the western half and Mr. Manuelito in the eastern half. Occasionally, they joined forces in the same area, depending on where most of the prospective recruits were to be found. Early in 1943, they were reassigned back to the San Diego area. Sergeant Johnson taught the first class of Navajo recruits in December, basing his instruction on the established code formulated by the initial 29 men. He taught only one class, then selected 5 men who seemed to be the most adept and proficient in communications. Hey, Shauna, Joko, Rosie Things. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Got from left to right, John Manuelito, John Benali, Rex Kantz, Howard Billyman, and Peter Tracy. Those who would maintain the best relationship with other men and those who were temperamentally suited to carry on the instruction under his supervision. He also knew who the men in the next class would be, for he was given the information from the boot camp where the men were in training. Sergeant Johnson left the area of instruction and gave his time thereafter to administration. Hey, I thank you guys for all being here, and thank you. During the formulation of the basic code, Captain Stilwell, cryptographer, had monitored transmission and offered criticisms. Since words not contained in the vocabulary had to be spelled out with the Navajo words for letters of the alphabet, Captain Stilwell felt that too many repetitions were necessarily introduced. For example, study the word Guadalcanal, which spelled with the word alphabets goat, ute, ant, deer, ant, lamb, cat, ant, nut, ant, lamb. The 4 ants might quickly be decoded as representing A's. That is, if the interpreter could understand Navajo. Repetition of letters is one of the keys to deciphering any code. A second criticism was that, since spelling proper names and other terms without equivalents in the code was too time-consuming, additions were needed. It was therefore decided to add 200 terms to the vocabulary and provide alternate terms for the 12 letters of the alphabet most frequently repeated in English. It was comparatively easy to come up with words representing various countries. Damn. Woo! It smells good, man. It smells like on a nice sunny day right now. I'm sorry, guys. I get distracted because you got the barbecue place up over there. It just smells just wonderful. Like when you cook out, with friends and family and shit. It smells good. It was comparatively easy to come up with words representing various countries. Had rolled hat for Australia, bounded by water for Britain, braided hair for China, beard for France, iron hat for Germany, white clothes for India, red army for Russia, and slant-eyed for Japan. Wow. Damn, they could have picked something different for that one. That's pretty fucked up. These and others were decided upon when the group had to choose a word for Italy. They were baffled. Mr. Johnson said later that boot, denoting the shape of the country, which have served as a perfect equivalent, but no one thought of it at the time. Finally, one Navajo said, "I knew an Italian once who couldn't talk without stuttering, so the word for Italy became stutter." In talking about this new list of words, one man says, if the word ant appeared several times for A and the enemy heard Wallachi, 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 he might catch on. So the group decided to add apple, Bolasana, and axe, sandhill, and so on. The 6 letters most frequently repeated in the English language are E, T, A, O, I, N. Alternates for these letters are as follows, and I'll let you guys Second set of letters most frequently used are S, H, R, D, L, and U. One alternate was adopted for each of these. You got sheep, snake, horse, hare, rabbit, ram, deer, dog, lamb, leg, ute, uncle. The recruits were carefully trained in the use of the alternates. Captain Stillwell monitored the transmissions of messages, including the additions, and was completely satisfied. Transmission speed, because of the addition of the 200 turns, had greatly increased, and the frequency of repeated letters had been corrected. Guadalcanal could now be spelled goat, ute, ant, deer, apple, lamb, cat, axe, nut, axe, leg. The alphabet with additional equivalents and additions to vocabulary approach terms for names of countries follow. Hey, what's up, Spin Cobra? Howdy, howdy. Good to see you, man. Rhodey's Jam Cave, everybody. What's up? Okay. Here. I won't read all these out, but I'll just let you guys just glaze over them. And if you guys want to share each other's links, do have new people in chat. So if the new people in chat do have a channel, we do share links here for everybody's channel to help build them up. So if any of the mods can drop links, you guys are more than welcome to. Hey, me too. Me too, Shauna. I figured this was an interesting book to pick out, and it was. Along with the Mysteries of Arizona, the other book that I had. In that Mysteries of Arizona book, the first story that was in the book was Ira Hayes, and he was one of the code talkers. And one of the guys that put the flag up there. The one that they have in the little memorial thing. He's the one all the way to the left. Yeah, it's always nice, man. People get recognized like that. The sacrifice they you know they put down for this country, you know what I mean? To keep us all safe and everything. It's only right. All right. Well, that's quite a few words, man. Look at that. Dang, man. I think they went through the whole alphabet here. I see some more on the next page here. Yeah, quite a few, man. I think they went through the whole alphabet with that. So Oh, just seen your notification there, Spitting Cobra. I'll be able to check that out after I'm done here. All right. After memorizing the alphabet equivalents and practicing spelling out terms and names of places, the Navajo recruits then set out the prodigious task of memorizing the entire vocabulary of 411 terms. Memory had to be lightning fast in a combat situation. Mr. Johnson says the code talkers presented a phenomenal feat of memory. I don't know how to this day how they could react so quickly to those substitute words in Navajo in a fraction of a second. That's amazing to be able to decipher all them words like that in just a split second. I mean, that's crazy. To arrive at this proficiency, they had to study long hours, day and night. He reports that the drill continued over portable radios in the field day after day, and deft fingers trained in rapid, legible printing recorded those messages. Washington officials never ceased to be amazed at the dispatches that materialized from a word succession of guttural, nasal, tongue-twisting sounds. One of the Indian instructors reports that camp was not made up of 8-hour days. He says, we'd spend the day on field exercises, crawling around and walking with walkie-talkies. It was hard on our men, but we studied long hours at night. Well, Mr. Johnson, who acted as a bridge between the Navajos and the Marine Corps for the duration, would ask, what do you think of Mr. So-and-so? Do you think he'll make it? I knew I didn't have any business saying that Mr. So-and-so would make it as a Navajo communicator, unless I knew in my heart he had the capability. Just because I liked the way he looked and because we got on well together was not enough. I had to know that man would qualify that he was going to be faithful to his dying breath. Then I could say yes. We weeded out and turned down some of our Navajos because they had to have a certain education, let's say 10th grade. They had to be able to spell words like reconnaissance. There were those who wanted to be code talkers and who weren't Navajos, the children of traders. There were those who wanted, okay, they had been born on the reservation, had been brought up with the Indian children, but the language they knew was what we called the trading post language, and they were not able to carry on an intelligent conversation in Navajo. They could only say flour, sugar, and coffee, and hello, my friend. How are you? A little more. They just could not do what the Navajos and Marines had set up as a combined effort to accomplish. We tested some of them, but decided they were not capable of handling the work. We'd send them to motor transport or the infantry. We could not use them where there were thousands and thousands of lives at stake. If anyone would make the mistake of chalking down one digit incorrectly, saying we are strafing, shelling, and bombing position XX, number so and so, and it would be sent as 1,000 yards instead of 100 yards. You might get strafing, bombing, and shelling your own men. We couldn't take that chance. Every syllable in the Navajo language means something. It has to be pronounced exactly right. So we had to turn our way those non-Navajos who were proficient in the trading post language only. This was a highly selected group. I had to be able to talk to a man and say, I want you to get on that hill and I'm going to give you so many messages. And then after I've given you the last message, act according to that message. Understand? Is that clear? If the man would nod, that didn't mean anything. He had to say yes, sir, with a quick snap. Then if I had any reason to doubt the voice, I'd ask, why'd you answer me that way? Or can't you answer, yes, sir? Tell me. The man might then say, well, will you go over to that just once more? That was just what I thought. When the men understood, they would repeat the orders to me. They had to get it down pat so I would know it was right. The instructor says that not all the code talkers had the same IQ. Some caught on a great deal faster than others. The slower group would then stay in training a little longer to master the code. Sometime after the code talkers entered active service, Colonel Tinsley asked the regimental commander how he could be sure that the message one gave was the one received. After all, the Indians had no word for mortar, for they had never had such a weapon at the reservation. The answer was, "You can't be sure, but the messages get through." Then he added, "I happen to know that the Indian word for mortar is gun that squats, or sitting gun." Colonel Tinsley says, with that as a sample, one can imagine how garbled a message might sound to the white man. The recruiting of Navajos on the reservation was accelerated, and enough men were signed up to sustain the training program on a regular basis. However, to spur the continued search for qualified Navajos, Sergeant Johnson set up a document outlining plans for speeding the process. He pointed out that authority had been granted by the commandant to recruit 200 Navajos qualified for work as communications personnel, but that far less than that number had enlisted. He stated that although the Navajo tribe numbered out about 50,000, the percentage of illiteracy was high, and that efforts to procure a sufficient number for communications duty would entail an intensive canvass of schools, a scrutiny of selective service registration rolls, and a diligent search for qualified individuals both on the reservation and in adjacent towns where some had found employment. He proposed that a mobile unit will be formed for recruiting purposes, with a commissioned officer in charge, assisted by a clerk and a Navajo Marine, and if possible, a doctor to make physical examinations without delay. That same month, Mr. Johnson sent a letter of inquiry to Major Shannon and Marine Recruiting Station in Phoenix that throws some light on the success of code talkers who were seeing action in combat areas and Mr. Johnson's desire for more men for the program. One day at Camp Elliott, Sergeant Johnson received an order to see the Chief of Staff. On reporting, he was handed correspondence between the Chief of Staff's office and that of the Commandant in Washington, stating that in as much as the Navajos there at the communications school had a high intelligence quotient, a good education, and a command of 2 languages, they should be recommended for the rank of private first class and the completion of their training. At the completion of their training. This was to be an incentive for the men to show them that the Corps was grateful for what they are doing. The men responded as expected with even more enthusiasm for the job they were doing. It's amazing. All right. Early in 1943, the Navajo Training Center was moved to Camp Pendleton, about 30 miles up the coast from San Diego, where it remained for the duration of that war. It was here at a crucial time in the training of 6 or 7 classes, only 1 week before graduation, that the order for raise in rank was rescinded. Each Navajo expected to receive the rank of private first class, a rank that under ordinary circumstances might not be achieved in less than a year's commendable service. Captain Connor, later on Major Connor, the adjutant and signal officer for the 5th Division, called Sergeant Johnson into his office to tell him that Colonel Jones of Camp Elliott, who had the responsibility of approving all nominations for raise in rank, had been transferred to another post, and his place had been taken by Colonel Creswell. Colonel Creswell had disapproved all the names of the graduates of the classes in the Navajo Training Center. He had said, "I have some candidates of my own who will get preference." Major Sullivan, commanding officer, tried to change Colonel Creswell's mind, because these men had been promised the rank, and he felt very deeply that the promise was sacred and should be kept. He assured Colonel Creswell that no further promises for the rank would be made to new recruits entering the program. Although Major Sullivan presented this case eloquently, he was informed in sharp terms by Colonel Creswell that he wanted to hear no more about it. Captain Connor reported that the ultimatum to Sergeant Johnson and told him to get the men information and he would tell them the bad news. The sergeant, however, insisted, "It's a dirty job, but it's mine and I'll do it." The innate strength of character and acceptance of what cannot be helped was reflected in the reaction of the Navajo communicators. They evidenced no outward sign of disappointment or ill feeling, earning for themselves the deep gratitude of their officers at the camp. Here's the Marines at Navajo Communication School Training Center at Camp Pendleton in 1943. A coffee or a sandwich? Yeah. A sandwich doesn't sound too bad right now. Maybe a Subway sandwich or something. All right, guys. That was the end of that one. If you guys would like to hear more, I can definitely go to the next chapter here. So you guys can drop me a 1. We'll gladly continue on to the next chapter here. All right. Cool. All right, we'll continue. All right, this is the Navajo Code Talkers in action. Anglo-Marine Louis Steinbacher tells a humorous story concerning the Navajo Code Talkers early in the war. Preceding the invasion of Roy Namur in the Marshalls, he was aboard the Navy ship GC-1 Appalachian, a communications ship loaded with radio transmitters, receivers, and antenna. The flagship of Admiral Richard Connolly, Commander Task Force Northern Expeditionary Troops. While en route to Roy Namur, orders were given to break radio silence by opening up with every radio aboard, sending dummy messages. This, they were told, was to make the enemy think that an enormous armada of ships was heading out. The most powerful radio set on the ship, an Army SCR-299, was mounted in a panel truck, parked on the highest deck of the ship. The operation had no more than gotten started with general quarters sounding on the board ship. Sailors ran to their battle stations expecting an attack, but after a while, all security and activities returned to normal. This is a story they were told later. The ship's own radio picked up the Navajo's fake messages. The Navy operators hearing the foreign tongue coming in so loud thought it was the whole Japanese fleet right over the horizon. The commanding officer evidently informed the proper authorities of the code talkers on board, and the admiral had requested to hear the Indians in action. In his book, Guadalcanal Diary, Richard Tregaskis writes, "The ship was approaching Guadalcanal, and it was the night before. Dr. Malcolm V. Pratt, the senior medical officer aboard, told the author this amusing story. I went below to look around in the hole last night, expecting to find the kids praying, and instead I found them doing a war dance. One of them had a towel for a loincloth and a blackened face, and he was doing a can-can while another beat a tom-tom. After a landing, the Marines usually cut a swath 3 or 4 or 5 4 feet wide into the tangled jungle. Broad enough for ammunition carts to pass through, they were often able to penetrate thousands of yards within 2 hours after the first landing wave hit the beach." Hey, what's up, five of a kind? What's up? What's up? You're often able to penetrate thousands of yards within the 2 hours after the first landing wave hit the beach, confounding the grateful army contingents that followed. The signalmen set up the tall antenna of their field radio at the side of the trail, then tied the generator to a tree and cranked it. One of the original 27 code talkers on Guadalcanal relates the procedure as follows. We used several types of radio sets. The TBX unit was the one that we used most. It weighed about 80 pounds, very heavy to lug around. We had two sets, a transmitter and a receiver, connected with junky cable. We tried to set the generator on a bench of some kind when we could, so we didn't work, so we could straddle the bench and crank the thing. But this didn't work on a location where it was sandy, so the coconut tree came in very handy. We hooked the generator to the trunk, straddled the tree, and cranked. It took two men, one to crank the generator and get the juice going into the mic, and the other to transmit the message. We got information off the ship after landing and kept those in charge of the operation informed. One thing we learned in school was not to be on the air longer than absolutely necessary. You had to be careful not to repeat words in a sentence. That is, if the message had to go through more than once. We tried to say it differently every time. We were also told not to use the same words too often in a sentence, and that we had to be accurate the first time. If a message has to be corrected or repeated too often, you're giving the enemy a better chance to locate you. On Guadalcanal, we had to move our equipment in a hurry because the Japs started to shell the very spot where we were operating. The men did regular Marine duty much of the time, but were available for communication work at all times. One reports, we might be 100 to 200 yards away when somebody would run to us and say, a Navajo message. Then we hurried to our equipment to receive the message. The way it was known that there was a message in Navajo is that the word Arizona or New Mexico was used to indicate that one of us was needed. The use of the code was totally at the discretion of the commanding officer, of course. Sorry, there's a guy over here just doing some work over there, and he's got some kind of gadget or something that's making like a beeping noise. No, it's not Morse code. The use of the code was totally at the discretion of the commanding officer, of course. Interviews with code talkers who were active in the campaign in the South Pacific disclosed the fact that their service to their officers varied greatly. Some officers used the code almost exclusively when they were in tight situations, while others report that their officers relied on other means of transmitting messages at such times. Lieutenant General R.E. Cushman, Jr. says, it seems to me that the code talkers were used mostly in communications from battalion to company level, wherein the tendency was to give away a lot of information if the conversation was in English. All right. Lieutenant General A.L. Bowser, who served with the 3rd Division, remembers using the Navajos for classified messages to the regiments when the radio was out, which was frequent in the jungle country. He recalls that for some reason the 21st Marines used them more than other outfits. Colonel C.A. Laster says that the Navajo code was not needed in areas where the officers felt that the Japanese were not in a position locally to monitor or react to regimental or battalion tactical nets. Marlo Williams, who served as a battalion commander during the Guam campaign, had a code talker assigned to him for sending messages during landings and beach assaults. He says, I recall that this talker was very helpful in my CP group in providing radio transmissions and vital information for the establishment of the initial CP location, and all through in and Indian language. which to my knowledge was never intercepted or decoded. One Navajo feels that the commanding officers did not recognize the value of the code at first, but by the time the 4th Division was in action, had become a more or less established system and was used quite a lot. He said the code had become somewhat perfected by this time. Some officers used the talkers a great deal in rear echelons, but it was sometimes necessary to utilize the men in landings and in front lines with their portable equipment. Telephones could not be used until after lines had been established, of course. One of the men reports that they did not always have the same teammates, exchanging at times in the battle area. Some of those in the front lines used Morse code and radio with straight messages in English, as well as sending them in the code. Messages were sometimes sent simultaneously in a different media. He feels the code was very effective in spotting artillery or directing shelling. Direct, the area was marked off in squares and numbered. A directive might be artillery needed 265. In such a situation, the Navajo language was most effective because it was done so fast. Forward observers would spot these areas and give the information to the talkers for transmission. There was one place where they had the code down so pat that the Navajo at the other end said, "They're going to have a squad dance in Quad 11. Stand by. Birds are coming." The birds were fighter planes, of course, and the dive bomber a chicken hawk. It sounded as if they were planning to have a lot of fun in Quad 11, but the message told the code talker that the enemy would be bombing there. The most important use of the coded messages, or so it seemed to this Navajo, was pinpointing areas that were in danger. Man, good thing he told them before they even thought about having a party. Many of the Navajos report that, according to their experiences, the code was extremely helpful when things were tight, such as approaching the islands. During a coordinated assault, fast communication was imperative. The Navajo code was much more quickly translated than any of the other codes in use. Another code talker reports that his officers used the code more often when things were more relaxed, rather than when they were tight, he says. "I remember very well the campaign on Saipan, when we wanted to take a town standing up, but the Japs had moved a lot of their guns into the town and they started lobbing everything they had at us. So the Navy was given the order to level the town. We circled it. We were relieved by Army personnel who set up positions in front of us. But that night the Japs launched the biggest counterattack of the Saipan campaign. They broke through the Army line and we had to form another line. Actually, we didn't know which was the Jap line and which was our own Army line. There we were in the dark all night long in that precarious situation. The Japs captured some of our artillery, but they had no ammunition, so it was useless to them. But of course, we didn't have it then, and that was pretty sad. 2 days later, we finished off at the island and pulled across to Tinian. Very little code talking was possible during the emergency of Saipan because things were moving too fast. It seems to me that the use of the code was most effective when the Marines were up against something, when we were sitting in one place too long and wanted to move on. When lines were established and planned strategy could be carried out to take the next hill, the airport, or what have you, that's when the code talkers were in the greatest demand. One Navajo was a sub-chaser on the way to Saipan, and he reports that during the trip that he was in a constant communication with all ships in the convoy. However, he had little to do because they didn't encounter the enemy on the trip. They dug foxholes soon after they landed in Saipan because the Japanese hit the beach with fire. As soon as it was possible, they set up communications even though they were still being shelled. Fortunately, shrapnel did not hit the radio. When they got to the top, they were amazed they had made it alive, for they could see they had been sitting ducks for the enemy. Voice code transmissions of operational orders laid groundwork for advances from the Solomons straight through Okinawa. This was the writer of an article for the Leatherneck. For example, the Naval Air Force ran into stiff resistance around the Bismarck Archipelago. It appeared that the Japanese were able to decode messages without difficulty, and so were apprised in advance of where the aerial forces would strike. Many a flyer was lost over the landlocked harbor, a victim of murderous anti-aircraft guns placed on surrounding hills, pouring death, dealing fire at bombers, winging their way through the slot. But 11 code talkers brought in to man the Navy AirNet secured the communications, preventing the enemy from acquiring knowledge of intended attacks ahead of time. These Navajos were lifesavers in every sense of the word. Back in camp, Sergeant Johnson, still alarmed because the procurement of Navajo personnel was failing below the goal of 25 a month, sent a suggestion to the Commandant of the United States Marine Corps proposing that a center be set up in the South Pacific for training Navajos already in the service. He wrote that the personnel had been made to recruit and train Navajo talkers in the Marine Corps in sufficient numbers to assign 82 to each division. Only 163 had enlisted at the time, 24 of whom had failed to make the grade. To alleviate the shortage, Sergeant Johnson recommended that a skeleton crew of code talkers, 6 to 8 men, be attached to each Marine Corps division to participate in tactical problems, and that the balance of Navajo personnel be assigned to a training center in the South Pacific area. He suggested that someone else might take his place at Camp Island to free him for supervision of the training of new personnel in the Pacific. Sergeant Johnson's suggestion was not acted upon for some time. Meanwhile, letters regarding the successful use of the Navajo code talkers in the field came to his attention, giving him further inspiration to press on with his project of training Indian communicators. On May 15th, Julian C. Smith, Commanding General of the 2nd Marine Division, Fleet Marine Force in the field, wrote such a letter concerning the success of the project. He said, in part, A. In their primary billets as talkers, they have functioned very well, handling traffic rapidly and accurately. When not employed as talkers, and some of the Navajos have been used as message centermen and some as radio operators, they have functioned satisfactorily in both capacities. As general duty Marines, they have, in general, been excellent, showing above average willingness to work at any job assigned to them. He therefore recommended that the program of supplying Navajo Indians trained as talkers to Fleet Marine Force units be continued. In June, the Commanding General of the 1st Amphibious Corps in the field urged the Commandant of the United States Marine Corps to encourage Navajos to continue to enlist in the Corps as communications personnel. He also suggested a plan of distribution of the men after training. The heart of his communication as follows. It is considered desirable to continue enlisting Navajo Indians for duty in the Marine Corps as communications personnel. The primary duties of these men should be that of talkers for transmitting messages in their own language over telephone circuits as well as over radio circuits. Their secondary duties should be of that of message center personnel. This designation will not limit their usefulness to the Marine Corps, however, as they have shown remarkable aptitude in their performance as general duty Marines. The following table is a suggested distribution and is also believed to be minimum requirements. Two per infantry and artillery division, 4 per infantry and artillery regiment, 4 per engineer regiment, 2 per engineer battalion, and 8 per pioneer battalion. It was decided to get all the code talkers together every month to tell them what changes had been made in the code. I was picked to make arrangements and send memos to all the code talkers in my division. I was told, we'll find the place and then the men will all come together and you can instruct them, explaining the changes that have been made in the code. If you need another day, we can arrange for 2 days. Headquarters in Oahu is about 200 miles away. You fly up there for 2 or 3 days ahead of time to get all the information you need. So that was all arranged for me every month before we would have our meeting. I did this for 4 months. The same boys came from all over for these refresher courses. Some of the boys missed out because they were on maneuvers on the days set for the course. The boys suggested that all of them congregate for a longer time to give them the chance to rehearse the terms. When they rushed back to their companies, they were often sent out again in maneuvers and really did not use the code's new terms as much as they could have. When I went back to camp, I talked to my captain and told him how the boys felt about the course. The need for a longer time, the captain was very reasonable about the new plan, and within a week it was okayed by headquarters. The code talkers of the 5th Division came together as planned and stayed several weeks. When they were ready to go back to the companies, they were very accurate, very sharp. The Navajo who managed the retraining program in Hawaii reports an extremely humorous incident that surely made the Indians appear tougher than their white Marine buddies. This is the way he tells it. We were training on the Hawaiian Islands on a 2-day maneuver. The first lieutenant, we called him Stormy, said, "We're going to see how tough you guys are. We're going to cross this desert in 2 days. We're going to use only 1 canteen of water each, and we're going to see how well you can preserve that water." We started off. It was real hot. I imagine we walked about 20 miles that first day. He gave orders that we're not to eat the prickly pear cactus and said, "I don't know whether they are safe to eat or not. We'll stay on the safe side because we don't want anybody to get sick." Well, we Indians knew about that cactus. About 3 o'clock that first day when Stormy wasn't watching, we went over and cut the tops off some prickly pears, cut them down and sucked out the liquid. We didn't touch the water in our canteens. We didn't need it. The next day we started out and actually walked about 10 miles when all at once everybody was fagged out. Fagged out? All the men had emptied their canteens and were dying of thirst. We shake our canteens and men would say, "Oh, how do you Indians get along without water?" We'd answer in an offhand manner, "Oh, we've got lots of water left." About 2 o'clock, they started keeling over. They just couldn't go any further. Some of us Navajos said, "Let's go over to Stormy and see how tough he is." He was just sitting there on the hill, and we said to him, "Come on, let's go." "Do you fellows still have plenty of water?" he asked, and we said, "Oh yeah, we've got plenty of water." We all shook our canteens so that he could hear the water gurgle. And we said, "Come on, we just got 10 more miles to go to get out of the desert." He said, "I don't think I can make it. I'm out of water, and I don't want to ask you fellows for any of yours." So we all just sat down, but he was game and didn't want to give up. Pretty soon he got up and said, "No, if there are any of you that think you can't make it, you can stay right here, and when we get back to camp, we'll have them send water out." We had gone about 100 yards when he fell down. This time he gave up and said, "I don't think I can go any further." He laid down and everybody else did too, excepting us 3 Navajos, and we're still standing up. Stormy said weakly, "Hey, chiefs, do you think you can go all the way in and back to camp? I'm going to write a letter for you to give to the Colonel Woods. Then this will tell him to fly out some water in a 5-gallon can and drop it. Then get a water truck and tell him to come in tonight with more." So we went on in and got into camp about 5 o'clock. I gave the note to Colonel Woods and he laughed. He asked, "Why me?" He asked me, why don't the men out there have any water?" I told him we were trying to get across the desert on that 2-day hike and one canteen of water. "That's not right," he said. "You're supposed to have 1 canteen for each day." Well, he did order planes to fly cans of water over there, but I heard that when they dropped, they split wide open. The men ran to the spot and lapped up the water like dogs. The truck was late getting there, and these poor guys almost died of thirst. When it did arrive, the men drank it all. I wouldn't wonder if it was 100 gallons. We never told Stormy why they still had water in our canteens. I suppose he and the other guys thought, wow, those Navajos are tough. No wonder they can live on the reservation. They can live without water. As has already been noted, the communicators were troubleshooters as well as talkers. One of the men tells of one harrowing experience. Okay, let me go ahead and check the chat here. Been on a roll, just chatting, talking away. Alright. Hey, Laren Directo. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I was at the radio station when a man came from Company A. He was a new man with the rank of corporal. He was to go with me to show the way to where the lines needed repair. I put the necessary wire on my hip and started running. Hey, what's up, you people? I'm over here at the Railroad Avenue Park, man. Since the corporal was a new man, a lieutenant said he would go with us. The corporal got lost. I knew he was lost, and I said, this is not the place we're supposed to go. I stopped and pulled up in the canyon to see if I was wrong. Companies A, B, and C were spread out in this area. As soon as I stepped into that canyon, we were met with fire, so we moved back out as quickly as we could. But the corporal did not move quickly enough. We discovered we were on the wrong side of the company that needed the repair. We crawled back to our base and had to report that we had lost everything. We couldn't even bring back the body of the corporal. I was told that Japanese and Marines' clothing were up front and that the Marines had fired on them. We had been fired upon by our own men. I felt so badly about it that I lost all my strength for a while. When these troubleshooters had to go out during the night, they were met by guards with leveled guns on their return, and the time-worn question, who's there or who's coming, they had to know the password, which in the case of the company had the man quoted above was the name of any state in the Union. New York, Wisconsin, Indiana, Virginia, or what have you. During certain combat situations like the one described previously in taking a town on Saipan, the code talkers found it impossible to send messages. Such a situation faced one special team of code talkers when they stormed ashore on Tarawa in one of the bloodiest operations of the war. They were on one of the earliest waves and got too far into the front lines. The platoon commander kept pushing them to go. Shit. I was almost drowned. I took off my pack, but somehow I got caught on something. Maybe it was my gas mask that I hadn't taken off. So I was dragging that pack. As I was coming ashore, someone cut off the pack with a combat knife and dragged me up on shore. Water was coming out of my mouth and nose, but I survived, and we found our company that night. The next morning, another guy, White, and I went down to the shore to get that pack. We saw a lot of Marines that had been killed still on the beach. We took our choice of packs and rifles. About that time, a tank landed and we followed it, which we found wasn't too bright of an idea. The Japs zeroed in on that tank and started throwing mortar shells on it. A shell exploded right near me. Felt funny all over. I felt my head felt enormous. It was like that for a week. Tragedy and comedy walk hand in hand in dramatic situations such as the one graphically related by the code talker who found it necessary to leave the communication school because of having gone AWOL. It is said that in almost every operation during the war through the Solomons and the Marianas. Hold on. All right, gotta move it over. Gotta move it over. It said that almost every operation during the war through the Solomons and the Marianas at Peleliu and Iwo Jima, G2 answered dozens of false calls to listen in on what sounded like Japanese dialect. En route to Iwo Jima, according to an article in the Leatherneck, aboard the 5th Division's command ship, a Navy Commodore mistook the code talk of two Navajos for Japanese. The communicators had set up with division headquarters on deck, and the Navy officer was on the bridge. The author of the article says that the officer shouted into his set, "Cut that interference. The Navajos continue dispatching without a break. If you don't cut that interference, I'll come in there myself and get you guys," he yelled. The 5th signals officer never told the Navy Commodore that the strange tongue which gurgled in his earphones was Navajo. Richard F. Newcomb, in his book Iwo Jima, in discussing the preparation for the invasion of that island, says infantrymen cleaned their weapons, recleaned them, packed and repacked ammunition, sharpened their knives and bayonets. Drivers checked their vehicles and communications. The men tried out their equipment. In the USS Cecil, the Navajo teams had a final run-through, a test over a circuit running from General Rocky's headquarters topside to a compartment below decks. 4 Indians beat 4 Anglo Marines in speed and accuracy of message transmission. One talker reports that he and his cousin worked as a team during the invasion of Iwo Jima. Wow, damn, I wasn't aware that this one was a long chapter here, guys. Shit. I thank you guys for being here, though. As he remembers, there were about 25 code talkers in his division. The division was detailed to take the airport. The 5th Division was to take Mount Suribachi. The 3rd Division was standing by in case they would be needed. There were code talkers in the 5th Division and at communication headquarters on board ship. Messages were sent in Navajo from division to division and from ship to shore, regulating mortar fire. He remembers one message particularly that he received from his cousin stationed on the ship, telling the front lines to move back so they could fire into the area. The same Navajo relates a little incident on Iwo Jima as the men neared Mount Suribachi. I heard a little noise up there, some small crackling sounds, and a voice pleading, "Mizu, Mizu." Well, then there was a machine gun and tracer. Then a shell from the ship bursting all over. And everything was quiet. I guess the man was dying. After I went to Japan with the occupation forces, I learned the Japanese language and found that the man had been saying, "Water, water." Major Howard Connor, in commenting on the gallantry of the code talkers, said, Were it not for the code talkers, for the Navajos, the Marines would never have taken Iwo Jima. This is his version of the capture of that strategic area. Hey, Wolfman, what's up? What's up? The entire operation was directed by Navajo code. Our course command post was on a battleship from which orders went to the 3 division command posts on the beachhead and on down to the lower echelons. I was signal officer of the 5th Division. During the first 48 hours while we were landing and consolidating our sharp positions, I had 6 Navajo radio nets operating around the clock. In that period alone, they sent and received over 800 messages without an error. Weeks later, when our flags was raised over Mount Suribachi, word of that event came in the Navajo code. The commanding general was amazed. How he wanted to know, could a Japanese name be sent in the Navajo language? This is Iwo Jima, guys. The Navajo who sent the message, I probably pronounced that Japanese word. Sheep, uncle, ram, ice bear, ant, cat, horse, itch. Or he might have used the nickname that one talker and his teammate used, Mount Sepa. As has already been noted, it was necessary for the code talkers to adopt new words in the field. They actually had a revision, unwritten, because weapons had been developed since the formation of the original code, as well as new methods in which they were employed. There were new types of planes flown by the United States Armed Forces, and by 1943, new types of crafts were afloat. Men had to come up with words for such weapons as bazooka and words for ways of employing aerial attacks such as strafing. They had to assign a word to the device used by the Marines through which only could see, to which one could see human beings in the black of night. By the end of the war, 450 men had been recruited for the Navajo Communications School. Only 30 failed to qualify for service as code talkers with the Marine Corps in the Central and South Pacific. Mr. Johnson recalls one very able Navajo who was dropped because he could just not resist overindulging in firewater. Shore Patrol picked him up repeatedly and put him in the brig. When he muffed that last chance, he was let out of the program and sent overseas. Sergeant Johnson stayed with the program at Camp Pendleton until August 1944 and was discharged from the service about a month later. He had one regret. He had been retained at home base and had not been given the assignment of overseas training of the talkers in Hawaii. Wow. Man, that was quite the chapter. All right, guys. Damn. I didn't know that chapter was going to be that long. Man, I do thank you guys for being patient with me and sticking through to the end here. What did you guys think? Did you guys have any comments, any thoughts? Alrighty, go ahead. Hey, thanks, Luke. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, appreciate it, guys. I appreciate you guys very much for being here. Yeah, I wonder too. I ask myself that too, man. I think I seen something like on the last one that passed away. I don't know, maybe it was a couple of years ago. I'm not too sure on that. I'm not 100%, but I'm just guessing. But I, I don't. I'm not sure if there are many left. Yeah. And I want to thank all you guys for being here. Um, Luke, Dilho, John, Laren, Joko, Al SoCal, Amy Gonzalez, you people, Wolfman, okay, Five of a Kind Media, Rody's Jam Cave, everybody. Spinning Cobra, everybody, man. Thank you. Yeah, if you guys would be most gracious to, if you guys can donate anything, I want to give me a bite to eat, man. I'm hungry today. If you guys want to donate just for anything else, perhaps anything that'll go towards future repairs for my bike. The Cash App is up in the chat there, and the PayPal. Yeah, okay, Wolfman, I got it. Right on. Yeah, if you guys can donate anything, just to get something to eat or anything that I might need for my bike later on, it'll come in handy. I do put the money to good use. So I do thank you guys, and the PayPal and the Cash App is up in the chat there. And we shall catch you guys tomorrow. We'll see if the day is as nice as it was today. Hey, thank you, Rosie Things. I appreciate it. Thank you. And if you guys haven't hit that like button, make sure you guys do. And we'll catch you guys mañana. This is Jose G, the Lone Wolf of Arizona. Thanks for joining.